Call to order the regular board meeting of July 28th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 is roll call. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti. Treasurer LaFata.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg. Here. Clerk Berry is here. Trustee Demink is absent.
Please an excuse for Trustee Demink, unless there's any objection, and refrain from calling his name during roll call votes. Item 4 is presentations. There are no presentations tonight. Item 5, department reports. Are there any departments that would like to update the board or the public? Now is the time. Treasurer LaFata.
I'd like to report that the Treasurer's Office on April the 28th ordered a new drop box. It's been back ordered ever since then. We received notice that it should be delivered within the next week. There seems to have been a lot of concerns over the fact that there wasn't a new drop box out there. So I just want everybody to know in the township that there's been one on order since April the 28th, and it will be delivered within a week. Because of COVID-19, these things have been back ordered because they've been in demand.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Would like to remind everyone that there is an election coming up on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, August the 4th. Absentee ballots have been mailed to all those who have requested them. If you have requested an absentee ballot and have not received it, please direct your inquiry to the Elections Department in the clerk's office, and we will be able to locate it for you. There is also a resource available online through the election website that individuals are able to track their absentee ballot. You can see your absentee ballot request as well as the ballot and ballot number if it has been issued. In the event that you requested a ballot and have not received it, again, please call the clerk's office and we will be able to make sure that you get one in time for the August 4th election. The clerk's office and elections department will be open on Saturday until 4 p.m. in accordance with new state mandates. All clerk's offices have to provide 8 hours of availability the weekend before the election. Those hours can be split up however the clerk sees fit, and we have chosen to be open for 8 hours on Saturday until 4 p.m. In addition to that, I'd like to remind all those listening that this is a primary election, which means that you cannot split your ticket. We've been getting several calls into the clerk's office asking if their ticket can be split. You cannot. In a primary election, you must make all of your selections in the partisan section from either the Republican or the Democratic columns. We'd like the public to be aware of that. If you believe you have spoiled your ballot by crossing over and voting for candidates in both primaries, you may come to the clerk's office and we will get you a new ballot. It's just a matter of a mechanism of spoiling the old ballot and getting a new one for you. So if you believe that you have made a mistake, please come to the clerk's office, call the clerk's office, and we will find a way to help you remedy that situation as well. You can also do that in the event that you have made choices that you would like to change. You can also spoil your ballot and a new ballot will be issued to you. So there is a mechanism in place for that. We have received several phone calls on that as well. The polls are open on Tuesday, August 4th from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. You may also register to vote here at the clerk's office between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. on up to including election day. You may not register to vote at your precinct location. Trying to cover all of the questions that the clerk's office has received recently. If you do have someone who would like to register to vote, or you yourself would like to register to vote, you cannot do that at the precinct. You must do that here at the clerk's office on election day. And then you will be allowed to proceed to your polling location to cast your ballot. Thank you.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I have a report from the Leisure Services Department. One of the township's newest parks is ready for individual passive use. Find a new way to navigate life during a pandemic and launch your kayak at the Weber Paddle Park. The paddle park is located at 49239 Jefferson. While it is yet to be formally dedicated, it's ready for your use. This is a rural parcel that's free from picnic tables, shelters, or portable toilets. So come and use it as is appropriate for your use. We're trying to let the newly planted grass grow, so please refrain from stepping in the seeded area, if at all possible. A great big thanks to Wayne and Joan Weber for their donation and help in supporting and helping us to make this kayak launch a reality. Chesterfield Township Senior Center is closed and will remain closed in accordance with all executive orders. You can engage with the senior department through the Facebook pages at Chesterfield Township Parks and Recreation and/or the Chesterfield Township Senior Center. We look forward to recreating together again soon. The Leisure Services Department encourages you to visit the website at parks.chesterfieldtwp.org or our Facebook pages to stay up to date on activities. New programs show up regularly and space is limited. Call 949-0400 extension 4 to be placed on our email subscriber list. Upcoming activities include Fall Frenzy Baseball. Registration ends on October 21 for this fun league. Other programs with open enrollment are Safe Sitter Babysitting, art classes, soccer leagues, and senior outdoor sandwich social. Limited registrations are accepted for all activities, and the status of all programs is subject to cancellation or change based on pandemic response. And the last item, the radiating summer sun affords us plenty of opportunity to play. For $5 a vehicle, you can get into Brandenburg Park, enjoy a premium view of Anchor Bay from inside Brandenburg Park. You can walk the pier, watch the boats, cool off in the splash pad, explore the playground, plan a picnic, spend the afternoon in our park. With plenty of space to physical distance, it's an excellent spot to enjoy life close to home.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just an update from the Planning Commission. At our Planning Commission meeting last week, two very significant events, two issues that have been in the works for some time. One of them having to do with our ordinance and the utilization of something that our township planner has a proprietary tool called clear zoning. And we'll talk more about it as we go to full implementation. But in a nutshell, what happens is when you go into our township ordinance, whether you pull it up online or you read the printed hard copy, you know that as you go through different sections, there are definitions for different terms, and they are very significant definitions. They're covered in a completely separate section of the ordinance. And with clear zoning, one of the nice features is that all of the pertinent definitions throughout the ordinance are highlighted, and the text is hyperlinked, meaning that when you click on a word that requires a specific definition, the definition will populate in the screen that you're on. If you would like to, if you own a piece of property and you're wondering what you can build on it, you can simply click on a map and the zone will populate and give you permitted uses and all kinds of details about what needs to be done in order to develop that property. If you have an idea about a business or an idea about how you'd like to develop a particular business, you can utilize clear zoning to input the business, and then the app will then give you all of the places within the township where that particular business is appropriately placed. So there are a number of very handy features associated with clear zoning, and clear zoning is, I think, one of the main reasons that our QBS committee and ultimately our township board selected Giffords-Webster. The clear zoning product is the result of Mr. Arroyo's work. It is his design. It is an industry-changing application, and we're very lucky to have it here. I think it'll be a very nice addition to the planning department. Certainly the engineers are much appreciative. A lot of questions will be answered without having to go to township professionals. The other significant issue that we covered in our planning was the long-awaited 2020 revised master plan. The master plan was something that we contracted additionally with Giffords Webster's to help us to develop our master plan. And for those of you who have been around the township for a while, you know that our master plan is very out of date. And typically what happens with our master plan is when we revise it, we typically take about 80% of the old master plan, make a few tweaks, and the focus on this master plan has more to do with what we talked about in planning, more to do with the windshield, less on the rearview mirror. So certainly there's a lot of rich history in our township, but looking forward to where we're headed and then what steps need to be in place to make some of the vision happen. There was a lot of work that went into surveys and input from township residents, board members, and the master plan is not quite ready to come to the board. It was rolled out to the Planning Commission, and there was a request for feedback. One area that was of some significance is the idea of what the vision, the visions that identify all of the things that we see as a community as important. The vision statement took into account a lot of public input, and there were a number of goals and visions outlined, and they had a lot to do with the environmental impact of development. In fact, all of the visions, the highlighted visions, talked about the environment and the impact on the environment as we grow. Some commission members, myself included, asked for the draft that comes forward next to also include something that is critically important, and that is public safety. And as we grow as a community, how does our master plan reflect the intention of the board and the elected officials to make sure that our residents are safe? And we wanted to incorporate, a number of us on the Planning Commission wanted to incorporate in the vision, in the master plan, to say that this is a very significant issue for us, and looking at where the growth will be and making sure that there is adequate fire, police, rescue equipment as we develop is just as critical and maybe more than our commitment to the environment. And so it's a much more balanced request, and I'm looking forward to the final draft, because that's what it is until the board approves it. But we are one major step closer to approving our master plan, and I'm very excited about where we're going as a township. So I wanted to share that. It's a fairly big development coming out of the planning department. Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. Just a reminder that Monday, August the 3rd at 6 o'clock, there'll be the Historical Society will be meeting at the Historical Village. Bring a brown bag. We can't have the potluck with the current events going on, and the business meeting will follow after our dining. Thank you much.
Thank you. Any further department reports? Item number 6 is a consent agenda.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If a discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 6A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 14th, 2020. 6B, approval of the agenda with addendum if necessary. And 6C, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve is stated.
Motion by Clerk Berry.
Support.
Support by Trustee Vosberg. Discussion. Comments from the public? Questions from the board? Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7 is the regular agenda, 7A.
Item 7A is to approve a request by the Leisure Services Department to authorize the supervisor to execute the 2021 SMART contracts and adopt resolution number 2020-25 that will allow Chesterfield Township to continue its partnership with SMART.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Vosberg, support treasurer LaFata, support by trustee Joseph. Fred Barber with SMART, along with Jeff White with Richmond Lennox EMS is here if there's any questions. Treasurer LaFata.
This approval for SMART is for the shuttling of our seniors. It has nothing to do with mass transit that goes up and down Gratiot, so I want everybody to understand that this is for the benefit of our seniors, so they get transportation to when the senior center is open, to and from the doctors, shopping, things like that when they need it. It's very important to the township.
Any comments from the public? Questions from the board one more time? Motion by treasurer LaFata, support by trustee Joseph to approve item 7A as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion prevails. Item 7B.
Item 7B is to approve a request for a transfer of a Class C liquor license and to adopt resolution number 2020-27 for BJ's Wholesale Club, Inc., located at 45101 Town Center Boulevard, Chesterfield, Michigan, 48047.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Joseph.
Second.
Support by clerk Berry. Discussion. Comments from the public? Oh, come up to the podium, please. State your name for the record.
Well, thank you. What bars and restaurants use. So just sort of a technicality there. So actually what we're requesting, the actual license we're transferring over is called an SDD license.
Question for Attorney Siebert. Do we need to restate the motion as submitted? Okay, Clerk Berry.
The item is to approve a request for transfer of an SDD liquor license and adopt resolution number 2020-27 for BJ's Wholesale Club, Inc., located at 45101 Town Center Boulevard, Chesterfield, Michigan.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by trustee Joseph, support by clerk Berry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Just one question for you, sir. This SDD license is consistent with the license that is utilized in all of the BJ wholesale clubs typically?
Right. So SDD is used for selling spirits, alcohol off premise. So this is the license that your liquor store, your party store, your convenience stores have. So it's the only license that's applicable and available for what BJ's is doing, which is, selling the beer and wine to go, as opposed to having someone come and drink the alcohol on premise like you would with a bar or a restaurant, which is the Class C license. So to answer your question, yes, it is absolutely consistent. Although different states have different names for them, yes.
So the alcohol, again, you purchase it, you consume it off-site. There's no opportunity. A lot of buzz in the township about BJ's. People are very excited. The opportunity to have a drink at BJ's would have brought even more support. So, but that is not what this license is. This is you buy it, you take it off-site, you consume it at another location.
That is correct, just like you would at Costco or Kroger if you were to buy a six-pack or a bottle of wine.
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
Certainly.
Any further comments from the board? Questions from the public? Motion by trustee Joseph, support by clerk Berry to approve item 7B as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank
and
you
your
very
client
much.
for your investment in our community. Item 7C.
Item 7C is to consider a request by the Public Safety Department to approve the introduction and first publication of Ordinance Number 182, amending the Chesterfield Township Code of Ordinances, Chapter 46, Article 2, Division 5, to revise the regulations and prohibitions with respect to the offense of trespassing within the Township of Chesterfield and repealing any and all ordinances and/or resolution in conflict therein.
Do I have a motion?
Support.
Motion by trustee Anderson, support by trustee Vosberg. Questions? This is first reading, and I think Director Kirsten did just step out for a second. But questions from the board? Or comments from the public? Motion by trustee Anderson, support by trustee Vosberg to approve item 7C as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion passes. Item 7D.
Item 7D is a request for the Township Board by Facilities and Operations to pay annual invoice for eMaint Enterprises LLC work order system for a total cost of $6,012, which runs from May 31st, 2020 through May 30th, 2021 from GL number 101265801.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by clerk Berry,
Support.
support by trustee Vosberg. Discussion. Director Johnson is here. I'm sorry, Director Sonnenberg is here. Treasurer LaFata.
I'm curious, how many do you process a day?
So far, right now, pending in our system, we've processed 307 closed work orders. We have 98 pending. So this software is like the foundation of any really good maintenance facility software. Everything should go through a work order system. That way we can track. It's kind of provides responsibility on both sides. That you put the work order in and that we received it. It holds both sides responsible that that work is getting done in a timely manner. So we spent a lot of time the first year really entering all of our information. All of our buildings, all of our sites, all of our floors, all of our rooms, all of our vehicles. Stephanie Yenna, who works in our department, and Jeremy Jakes have done a fantastic job, even taking the software and splitting it into two so it covers not only our facilities, but also our vehicles. So we spent a lot of time getting all that in and then doing a bunch of dry runs internally to make sure it all works. Then what we did is about March, obviously none of us could see COVID coming down the street, but we rolled it out in March to all the department heads and started funneling all those work orders through our system. And what that'll do now is we wanted to be at about 500 work orders right about now, but we're at just over 400. So we're not as far as we wanted to be, but we're making progress. So the goal is to take that data once we have a big enough data set and go through it and share it with you. And then we can show, where most of our work is getting done, where most of these work orders are at. And there's benefits to that too. So when we go to do repair or replacement, we can judge on how many service calls we've had in certain units. And it just provides a good data set, because a lot of times when I came here originally, it was just a lot of paper moving hands, and everyone loses track of paper and no one wants to go through and look at the paper and dig through. So this is a great digital set. We have a really nice dashboard that we can refer to. And then I'd be happy to bring Stephanie and the team in and put on a presentation and show you how much information and work we've put together to put this thing to where we have it now.
Any further questions on the e-maintenance enterprise work order system? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, Mr. Sonnenberg, I'm just curious, when you log in a project, I know this is really the first year that we've converted from a very antiquated system that wasn't very efficient, and oftentimes projects got kind of lost. This is a much more accountability type system. You can see, what's there. I'm curious to know what and who makes the decision when you prioritize or sort of triage projects, because Oftentimes, I don't do day-to-day, the trustees don't have a role in the day-to-day operations, but we often get calls with like, you know where I'm going with this? Oh, you were smiling. I thought maybe you knew where I was headed, but there's calls that come in and they are, the weeds are this high on township property. And when can we expect that to be done? And I know there's been a lot of very special projects that have pulled workers off to take care of. Who makes the decision about the priorities of these projects? Because when I get an email or a call from a resident and they say, like, I've been talking to, multiple people at the township and it doesn't seem to get done. And then I take time off of work, I make an appointment, I come see Gary or some of the other people in the building and I just start asking questions about, is this a code enforcement? What's going on? It seems to me that there's a squeaky wheel kind of process in place. So if a resident calls enough times with a complaint or is, upset, then they can get, action taken. I would assume that if we're logging in all of these projects, we got 307, that we could sort of also include a prioritization. And who makes that decision? And how does the triaging of all the work that we have that needs to be done, who makes that call?
So our team does. We have a morning meeting and we go through. We're constantly. I'm getting work orders as we're, even at the desk. We're getting constant emails. And what we'll do is we'll evaluate those work orders and we make decision and we prioritize those work orders. So I would love, and trust me, you can call me anytime if there's a grass issue or anything. Reach out to me, let me know, and if it's a concern, we'll try to get it done. But what this software is going to show, believe it or not, is our team is spread really thin. There's always a fire, there's always an issue, there's always a problem. We stop cutting grass, our plate is still full. It's all those other things that weren't getting done that we're trying to catch up with. So instead of cutting grass, which we had some growing pains cutting grass, but I think with Ultimate and his team, you can see it's the first time since I can remember we have mulch out front and we're making little improvements. So it's going to take us a little while to get there. Our team's a little smaller than it was, but I can't say a bad word about the guys that we have, the majority of them, on staff trying to keep up with the day-to-day operations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further comments on the board? Questions from the public? Motion by Clerk Barry, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve item 7D as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Motion prevails. Item 7E.
Item 7E is to approve a recommendation by Facilities and Operations Department to extend janitorial services with Aztec's cleaning services at the municipal offices for 6 months, August 2020 through January 2021, at the current monthly rate of $5,897 from GL number 101265931.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Vosberg,
Second.
supported by Clerk Barry. Discussion. Treasurer LaFata.
Did we think about establishing any cleaning standards? I did some research. Nobody ever got back with me, but most of our school districts in large office complexes actually define cleaning standards. Basically, it starts out with you can't manage what you don't measure. And there's no room for continuous improvement if you don't measure where you're at because you don't know where you're going. And it has some hints of where to look for issues. Says look in the corners for buildup over months. There's all kinds of things. And I did mention it. I know you guys have been busy with Weber Paddle Parks and, Salt River, marsh projects. But like I said, this is not an unknown thing. It's part of continuous improvement. And it basically states if you don't start, you don't know where you're at. If you don't know where you're at, you don't know if you're improving and getting what you pay for.
So I would be happy to speak with you. We just had a meeting today in our group. we all agreed. We met back on June 10th, I believe it was, with the Ways and Means Commission, and you were part of that meeting, and we had an agreement that we were going to work together to come up with some solutions. And we haven't, I apologize if I missed, I know our team, we haven't heard back from you. So I apologize if there's any misunderstanding. I thought we were still working together on this, and we were waiting for a response. And I guess I apologize. I didn't know, because I met with our team deliberately on this today and said, have you heard anything?
I thought there was an understanding that we were going to get together and resolve this before we put the contract out.
Yeah, that's why we asked for the extension, because our last meeting, you said you were going to develop a scope and then come back to us, or at least tweak the scope to your liking. And I apologize. We haven't, there must be some, I'll take blame for that. I'm sorry.
There's no sense in me developing a scope without your input and buy-in, because what it happens is it just fails with a 4-3 vote at the board. So
But we could at least try.
Well, I was all up for trying. Nobody came back.
But you never came back to us with any. So I apologize. Look, I'll come see you tomorrow. I didn't know there was. I know we met on June 10th, and then we never had another conversation after that. So I apologize about the disconnect. I know with our group, we were ready with open arms this is an issue that we wanted to resolve. The only benefit about, I guess, the procrastination here is we get to revisit this post-COVID. So if there's any changes, we can make changes to the scope. So I apologize. I will take some responsibility in this, but I think that as of today, our cleaning crew is doing a good job. And what I'm asking for today is to continue with our cleaning crew as we work to make any changes that Treasurer LaFata or anyone else wants to incorporate post-COVID too, before we sign another contract or we decide to go out to bid. That's kind of what we're after here, is just 6 months to get us through COVID and then revisit this issue.
Any further comment? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I just, is there, I guess I'm looking for some direction from Treasurer LaFata. I know that you've come to the board before with this particular vendor, and when you've voiced some concerns, they've been responsive. I think they've met the needs that were laid out. When we went to a contracted, vendor, when our long-term sort of provider, in-house provider retired, it was an opportunity for us to bring in a crew, and we realized that one person trying to keep up with this building was really not adequate. And so we brought in a vendor, and it's really been there has been no long-term contract extended to them. And as we approach a long-term contract, I did get an opportunity to talk with Treasurer LaFata about the idea of setting standards so that, and I like that idea. And if I understood you correctly, what you want to do with this extension is simply continue to work on that metrics and make sure that we have very specific standards, and obviously making sure that the building is properly sanitized in this environment is far more important than it was when we began talking about cleaning crews. It's not just emptying waste baskets, it's making sure that we're using the right sanitizers on door handles and fixtures and in the restrooms to protect residents from really a life-threatening illness. So a lot at stake, and making sure that we have a benchmark is critical. So I like the idea of continuing to work on that and utilizing this just to maintain our current relationship with the vendor we have. Is that basically what you're asking for in this motion?
Right. This has to be a collaborative effort. In order to succeed with this cleaning, everybody has a different idea. Look, I have one set of eyes. Everybody here can see, and I appreciate anybody's feedback at any time. Like you had mentioned earlier about weeds, and if you see something, please let us know. We might not be able to get to all of it, but at least we can document that and incorporate that to the changes we will make in the future. Right. So that's why we had the meeting, to kind of bring everybody to the table and get everybody's feedback.
Great. And I like the incorporation of Treasurer LaFata. One thing you can say, he's here every day. He's here every day. And so he knows the building, he knows who comes into the building, and he's a valuable asset in that committee, and I appreciate you extending that and working collaboratively with him. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Questions from the public? Motion by Trustee Vosberg, support by Clerk Berry to approve item 7E as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion prevails. Item 7F.
Item 7F is to approve a recommendation by Facilities and Operations Department to have Aztec's cleaning services provide janitorial services at the DPW building for 6 months, August 2020 through January 2021, at the monthly rate of $1,235 from GL number 591441931.
Do you have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Joseph. Discussion.
So
Quick question, this is the same deal?
Yeah, this is basically, the DPW staff used to clean the building, and during the COVID crisis and everything else, we moved to a cleaning service. It's our first crack at it, so that process is evolving. Once again, we're asking to continue with that cleaning service and then revisit again in 6 months when we have a better idea of where we want to be and tighten the scope down and the responsibility. So it's basically the same thing, different building on a lot smaller scale.
The rate seems pretty reasonable. It's $300 a week for that building. It's a pretty big building, so.
Our guys still do some of it, but the bathrooms were our biggest concern.
Yeah.
We wanted to have a professional cleaning company clean the bathrooms and some of the high touch areas, so that's what we moved away from. Our staff still does a lot of the other daily basic stuff.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further comments from the board? Questions from the public? Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Joseph to approve item 7F as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion prevails.
Thank you very much.
Item 7G.
Item 7G is to approve a recommendation for the payment of annual dues to the Michigan Townships Association, MTA, for the period of July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021, in the amount of $6,771.04 from GL number 101248828.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk
Support.
Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg. Discussion. Comments from the public. Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve item 7G as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion prevails. Item 7H.
Item 7H is to approve the Finance Department's request for the July 2020 budget amendments.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Berry. Is there support? Is there support for the motion to approve the Finance Department's request for the 2020 budget amendments? Motion fails for lack of support. Come back next meeting. Thank you. Item 8 is addendum. There are no addendum. Item 9, public comment. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. State your name for the record.
Name's Joe Kadich. I live on Sutton. I initially came here to hopefully to discuss the proposition I made to Dan Acciavatti over what's really going to happen with the fish habitat, wanting to preserve it for swimming rather than send it over to fish habitat. I proposed basically I would help go out and poll the community. Didn't get anything back from him. Needed his help in doing that. I also made a request that let's look at taking that fish habitat, instead of putting it in the Vandenberg Park, put it over in the River Marsh after they dredge it. It's a better use of it. And to preserve the park for swimming. But since then, basically having no response, I guess I'll go to something else. Thing that bothers me, I'm getting some of these flags in the mail, I guess whichever you would call them. This one happens to be from Terry Weston. And in it she got the 4 trustees, Joseph, Anderson, Vosberg, and Brian Demink, giving Anderson and Joseph failing grades on everything mentioned here. And the thing that bothers me about this is a lot of these things are from years, a couple years ago that she's talking about, doesn't give the full scope of what she's accusing him of failing on. And I'm just wondering, being that she's not been at any of these meetings that I recall, at least up until the last couple of weeks, where she's getting this information from and why she's putting it out there. And basically, I'd appeal to the whole board, when you have your chance to talk, to say basically you don't agree with this. If this is your type of way you want to have a campaign and let it go off, basically off the rails based on this kind of information, I guess that's up to you. But I would hope everybody here would want to be honest about what's being out there. I've talked to some people in the store, and some of the reaction I get is, what's with these 3 guys, Anderson, Joseph, and LaFada? Somebody's putting some words out there that really are hurting them, and it's not true words. And so basically, like I say, I'm asking you people, let's try and have a good election here, not something based on untrue facts and everything. The one that really bothered me on here was the fact that she must be a Trumper because they're saying she's anti-Second Amendment. Now, what transpired on that whole situation revolved about the employees here wanting to carry guns on the jobs. And the 3 people that were against it, and rightfully so, stated, and most companies state the same thing, you do not carry guns in the workplace or on the job. The only people that should be doing it is the police department. And I guess with all the, if we've got a lot of Trump Republicans here, it's going to really appeal to them saying these guys are against the Second Amendment. Like I say, this thing is really not registering well with me. The other thing I wanted to talk about was Dan Acciavatti's letter in the Voice last week. It was a response to Paul LaFada's letter previously. And let's face it, they haven't been getting on here lately, getting worse as the past months go on. I thought at first was, like my brother-in-law used to say, Italian bonding, but it's gotten worse than that. And I'd like to share some information so that everybody out here, if everybody watches this, I don't know how many people do, understand what's really happening here. Treasurer LaFada.
About 30 seconds.
Pardon me?
30 seconds.
Oh, I'm done? Well, I guess I won't do. Anyway, I'll post it on my webpage if people want to look at my webpage, Joe Kadich for Supervisor, and I'll post everything on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public?
Good evening, Township Board and Township residents. My name is John Spica. Elected officials need to lead by example. Leading by example is the Spica way, a simple concept to follow and the right thing to do. Many elected officials on this Township Board have a hard time following the golden standard, which is leading by example. They were very eager to sign the Code of Ethics and Values, but that's as far as it went. A dog and pony show. Now it's our time as residents to do our civic duty and do a job performance evaluation on each and every one of our elected officials. My question is, do each and every one of our elected officials deserve another term? And I'm here to say absolutely not. We can and we will do better for this township. As residents of this township, we should never settle for okay in our elected officials. We should demand excellence in our elected officials. After all, everybody sitting on this board works for us, the residents, the taxpayers. We own the seats they sit in, the building we're in, and the mic I'm speaking in. As a candidate myself running for treasurer in this township, I do not like what I'm seeing playing out with this board in an election year. What is being played out is referred to as stacking the deck. What do I mean by stacking the deck? Stacking the deck is about buying an election so you have the votes needed to pass your own self-interest agenda. The township supervisor, Dan Acciavatti, has a 4-3 board. Let's be clear on that 4-3 board. We got Vosburg, DeMink, Berry, and Acciavatti. Mr. Acciavatti can push whatever agenda he wants through for now. But again, we're in an election year. Mr. Acciavatti, in my opinion, is not happy with the 4-3 board majority because any one of the 4 members could choose at any time not to support his agenda if they don't like something he does. So here's his running game, in my opinion. He supports a candidate who will rubber stamp and do whatever he wants. No checks, no balances, no questions asked in the treasurer's office. His candidate is Elliott. Here's his investment in Elliott so far that we know of. Mr. Dan Acciavatti, out of his CT fund, gave $100 plus an additional $1,000 to Elliott. Pasquale Acciavatti gave another $500, and Renardo Acciavatti gave another $500 for a total of $2,100 from the Acciavatti family. Very generous contributions. Kathy Vosburg, the trustee who tried to silence the residents at this podium from speaking 5 minutes to 3 minutes because she didn't want to hear the truth from the residents, gave Elliott $500, and according to Elliott's filing, the Vosburgs had a fundraiser on her on 6/30. Elliott has also received another $3,000 from Citizens for Honest Government. It's a PAC whose address is traced back to Dance Excavating, Inc. and DEI Properties. Between the Acciavatti's monetary support and PAC money, $620 brought in $9,088.06 in expenditures for a primary. So the supervisor's goal is to get a rubber stamp in the treasurer's office. No checks, no balances, no questions asked. So he can go unchecked on everything. His candidate, Elliott, has a title of an investment advisor. According to public records, Elliott has been with 3 different companies in the last 6 years. It's an average of 2 years per company, and now she wants to make another move. It's a huge red flag when you're jumping around. In my opinion, this usually means one of 2 things. Either you're not making any money because you're not good at what you do, or you get fired. Send a message to Dan Acciavatti on August 4th. Enough is enough, and no seat in this township is for sale. Sending his candidate packing. Thank you, good night, and God bless.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public?
Hello, Terry Weston. I'll try to reel in my mental state as accused by David Joseph again on social media. My dad received some disturbing literature last week, and he was appalled and downright disgusted when he read about how he and others bully and treat other board members with malice. Yet you question my mental state? Why do you feel the need to bully a decorated combat veteran? You need to sink anger management issues and get to the bottom of why you're so mean to others. The last time I checked, you do not have an MD or PhD after your name. I understand why you want to block me and censor me on social media pages that you moderate, because people will see the real you and how you have no sympathy and no respect for others. Well, as far as bashing, that's not okay. I'm a halfway decent human being, as stated by one of the board members. I'm not out to hurt nobody. I'm out to make Chesterfield Township a better place. Also, the pledge that you took to initiate, advocate, and seek pay raises if you were elected was total trash and not worth the paper it was written on. You not only advocated, Mr. Joseph, against this pay raise, you were the one that initiated it. And then you want to talk about ethics and the paper that it's written on? You not only got the 48% increase, how does that benefit the citizens of Chesterfield Township? I understand now why I was mocked for saying if I was elected, I would donate my first year's salaries to seniors and veterans, what I plan on doing. I know the residents are tired of the status quo, tired of the bullying, and tired of the mess. I'm here for a fresh set of eyes, and I want to do my best to serve the residents and get back on track. Thank you and have a good night.
Any further comments from the public?
Okay, great place to raise your family. And all this time I lived here, I was never more shocked than when I ran for state representative in 2016. I came here one evening to introduce myself to the public, and Speaker John Drew was talking. Some of you know him, some of you don't. And he made an accusation up here of one of the trustees, and literally I was flabbergasted. And I held off and I waited till after everything was done and we were outside. I said, John, you got to check your stuff out. You can't be doing that in public like that. And he says, no, Paul, it's true. And so I just kind of let it blow over because I figured, the Democrats are going to wipe them out, so it's no problem anyhow. And well, needless to say, that didn't work out so well. And here in 2020, I come back 4 years later, and the same exact accusation was put forward. And I've always believed if one person says it, you can take it with a grain of salt, and it's probably not true, or at best it's sketchy information. But when it came up again, I kind of got to speak about it now. We elected our township clerk to spend time in the office during business hours, and she spends less than 10% of her time in the office. She's also hired more people to her staff, and if nothing else, if she was in office, she would have one less person on the staff. And I just find it hard to believe that somebody can get elected to his position and rarely be here, rarely be around. I'm here almost every day, and I've never seen her here. I've seen Mr. LaFata here. I've seen Mr. Joseph here, but I've never seen our clerk here, except for election day. She was here then. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
All right, good evening, everyone. This is Mike Borton, and I just want to make sure everyone knows over next week when the election is over, just be aware that there are a lot of signs out in the common areas. And one of the unfortunate things is that there's actually probably the most signs I've ever seen in the township. I really hope that they are not going to be trashed if the outcomes are not like to anyone's benefit or something like that, or just thrown in the ground. Remember, they're common areas, and it's not just signs, but they get trashed all the time from motorists and from just general pollution. If you have the initiative, the end of the primary election and general elections, not only picking up your own signs, but if you can, pick up the trash that's around there as well. It takes the initiative of the leadership, and it can be vitally important to keeping our community clean. And at the end of the day, also remember that while there's a lot of people running, both here and elsewhere, at the end of the day, remember what you're running for. Being in a position of leadership means that you have to lead everyone. It's not just who you like, it is everyone. And so with that, you accept the fact that when it comes to elections, elections are more than just about who's running for the White House. It's about every level. Politics is about more than just parties. It's about ideologies and what people are willing to represent. And that at the core, government is more than just about DC or any other level. It is about civic engagement between the citizens and who they choose to represent them in this republic. And the final message for everyone, remember everyone in this room is representative of Chesterfield, is representative of Macomb County, of being a Michigander, being an American, and most importantly, we're all human. Be good to each other, and let's get through this. Good night.
Any further comments from the public? Thank you. Let's bring it up to the board, trustee. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, we are only one time. No, you can't do it after, Cap.
Are you going to address? You said that you were going to address.
Please, sir.
He was going to respond to the clerk spending money.
I just have to follow the rules, all right? Trustee Anderson.
I always get to be first, right?
Would you like to, I can have trustee.
I'm all set, sir. Ms. Weston, I enjoyed your passionate speech, your fire, your remarks, and your mailing. I did address this our last meeting, and there was a request to kind of highlight it again. I will, because there was a question about last meeting's recording, and I will address that. Okay. I know there was Mr. Joseph and I received Fs. The other two board members had straight As. Mr. Domink was real adamant that he had no part or was aware of this. You never talked to him. He didn't seem like he was too happy to be included. One of your issues that you cited, whoever did your research, as I said 2 weeks ago, whether it was you or your help, was Mr. Joseph and I voted to award a no-bid contract for over $187,000 to a preferred township vendor. I guess we got Fs for that. And as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, if you look at the agenda item on that meeting, Ms. Vosberg, supported by Mr. Joseph, approved that request, and all four of the trustees voted for it. I hope you don't teach school and give grades. Your administrators will be talking to you, or maybe you'll be in a lunchroom. Another one you talked about is a no tax, or we weren't granting tax breaks. I don't like bringing this one up, but you want to hear it again. There was a tool company in the township that failed to submit for a tax abatement in a timely manner. They contacted our assessor, who explained it. You didn't make the timelines. Our township attorney was also requested for opinion. Same results. A request came through one of our elected officials here in the form of a resolution to ask the state tax tribunal to grant that business a tax abatement. Consequently, Mr. Joseph, Mr. LaFata, and myself voted against it. The other 4 members voted for it. And I know it's totally legal, but it was kind of interesting that an individual related to that company had donated to the campaigns of 3 of the 4 people who voted to request the state tribunal to give it to him. Consequently, a state tax tribunal refused. All right, I'm not going to talk anymore about your report card because you also mentioned this one. I don't know if someone held this one up. This has a lot of credibility to it. Paid for by the private citizen with private funds, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee. It takes things out of context. It has nothing to do with the issues. It's a proverbial hit piece. All right. Now to finish up here. Thought we were going to set a record here. But as we get closer to election season, we're going to do everything possible to not campaign from the rostrum. That was spoken by Supervisor Acciavatti at approximately the 2-hour and 21-minute and 40-second mark of the recording of the January 28th board meeting of this year. During the public comments of the July 14th, 2 weeks ago meeting, 2 candidates endorsed by the Dan Acciavatti for Chesterfield campaign site delivered their remarks unfiltered and in their entirety. When we board members, myself in particular, began to deliver our remarks, the live feed went dead. I and others received texts and phone calls throughout the night as to what had occurred. What was the reason? Could it be explained? Electronic gerbils? Was there some nefarious activity at play? Again, who knows? I want to touch on another thing. The Second Amendment issue that has occupied the local awareness, and you might as well throw in the ethics issue too. It's occupied everyone here for the last month and a half. It is nothing but a smokescreen formulated by the opposition and championed by those apparently easily manipulated. Nothing more. We explained it, the reason why 2 years ago, why the 3 of us did not support the way the Second Amendment was being interpreted. It had nothing to do with this was workplace issue. The way it is now, and I believe we had a tremendously efficient work class, but the way it is now in this township, every lady and gentleman in the back there can come to work with an AR-15, AK-47s, whatever is legal, and they can bring them to work. Thank God we have better employees than that. I can name a dozen school districts right now that do not allow their employees to come to work packing their weapons with them. And I do respect the Second Amendment. I support it. And I respect people that do not see the same way. And I mentioned that 2 weeks ago. Okay, it is evident that the supervisor is not endorsing Treasurer LaFata's reelection. And those endorsements, it is evident that the supervisor does not want Treasurer LaFata on his team, instead replacing him with a loyal, pliable 5th vote. Treasurer LaFata brings 40 years of fiscal experience from the private sector, where he successfully managed multi-million-dollar budgets for his employer. Paul LaFata has a knowledge and professional life skill and knows in the analysis of the township's debts, credits, and fiscal well-being. You will be provided with specific facts and figures when making inquiries to Treasurer LaFata and when you make them. Responding in generalities and adjectives is not in his vernacular. He responds in facts and figures. I'm going to go back down memory here. These meetings that suddenly disappear. On the agenda for the September 17th, 2018 Board of Trustees meeting was an item for the township to continue with the Michigan Invasive Species Grant Program as approved by the previous board on November 2nd, 2015. Although it was being amended, herbicide spraying would continue even though the residents' opposition to it was adamantly expressed during that meeting. The item was approved with LaFata, Joseph, and Anderson citing and voting their opposition to it. During public comments that night, several residents again expressed their displeasure with the board majority that supported the earlier referenced item. There was also some other, might be unflattering remarks left directed at one of our full-time officials, not Treasurer Lafata, but I'll leave that out. The entire videotape of the board meeting was never viewed or knowingly existed, although a township employee was present to execute the recording. Was it equipment failure? Preemptive gerbils? Who knows? This morning, the Township H&R Human Resource Manager sent out an email that our contractor is addressing and upgrading to wireless and see if it was the system of YouTube streaming that may have caused the current issue that I'm referring to. For the record, the July 14, 2020 board meeting appeared on YouTube on the morning of Wednesday, July 15th. Although much of the tape is audible and visual, I will direct you or any interested party to go to approximately 2 hour, 26-minute, 45-second mark of the recording and view its conclusion. The comments of Trustee Lafata, Joseph, and myself are largely indiscernible, and so is the video. Amazing. Still waiting for a reason for that. At this time, I'm inquiring from a supervisor the names or names of those individuals who are the administrator or administrators that provide oversight of this recording process of the meetings as well as the upgrading procedure. Thank you very much.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I don't have any additional comments.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I have a few, like Trustee Anderson. My comments were obliterated from the record. So we had individuals that came to the board meeting 2 weeks ago. They passed out political propaganda as they made their way around the rooms distributing these, whatever. They made their way up to the podium, high-fived with the supervisor, went out, continued the distribution. Those individuals then made their way to the podium. They gave a full-throated 5-minute attack on the targets, Trustee Anderson, myself, Treasurer Lafata, almost on cue when that individual finished speaking, and his partner who got up and mumbled something tonight. I'm going to address that in a second. The video cuts out. So, Mr. Speaker's comments, I don't believe you were heard. A number of other individuals who spoke about, what's going on here and why were not heard. Tonight, you have a video camera in the back. That videographer is paid for by residents, a bipartisan group of residents, elected officials, myself, Trustee Anderson, Treasurer Lafata, former Treasurer and candidate Trustee Linda Hartman, Mr. Speaker, and Ms. Jones will contribute to the cost of that videographer, who is a professional. That video will be uploaded to a YouTube channel. And that YouTube channel I will post on the links, and you can find the links on all the people that I mentioned. Transparent Chesterfield is the YouTube channel. That video will not be edited. That video will not have cameras that angle in on individual speakers. It will not go out. It is a wide-angle lens that will capture the recordings of all the speakers and the podium. It is a nonpartisan group simply designed to provide the residents with a clean copy. It's not hard to do. Unfortunately, the administrators of the township page, I believe I've been told it is the clerk and the supervisor, they have no idea why the video keeps going out, as Trustee Anderson mentioned. They have no idea why it goes out, when it goes out. We've heard everything from power surges to you name it. But there's no reason that a township our size can't get a clean copy of the transactions of what Mr. Speaker referred to as the people's house to the citizens. I want to go in order, but it's difficult, so I'm going to jump around a little bit, and I want to address the speakers that spoke tonight. Mr. Manley, honorable person. If we got together in a room and had a drink with Mr. DeRue, well, we wouldn't because DeRue doesn't drink. But if you and I had a beer and we were talking about politics, we might find ourselves at dramatically different places when we start talking about national politics. We might find ourselves at completely different places. As we start to dial back and we look layer upon layer about what is important to our neighbors, what is important in our community, we find common ground. We find more things that we're together on than we're apart on, despite our political party. We're concerned about public safety, our fire department, our employees, parks, you name it. We would find more common ground as we push aside the national platform of our parties and focus on what impacts us the most. Mr. Manley referenced an individual by the name of John DeRue. John DeRue was a trustee candidate in the 2016 cycle. I don't know that there was a more contentious race between candidates. We kept it clean, Mr. DeRue and I. And there was a moment slightly after the race, one of the darkest hours in our township history, and that was the indictment, arrest, and eventual imprisonment of our former supervisor. The Democrats very quickly pointed out to me that blaming or associating that behavior with the work that Mr. Manley did or Mr. DeRue did or Treasurer Hartman did was not fair. That was an individual that made decisions that had nothing to do with his political party, but they went a step further and they said, if you're going to associate that behavior on us, how do you run with a candidate who never comes to work? How do you deal with a very crooked and unethical person on your board without it being on you? And that is a very, very poignant remark, because you can't. There is no party that subscribes to this idea that you come to work whenever you want and misplace the public trust, and you're protected because you have an R after your name the way the people that you vote with have an R after their name, and they tolerate these things. And we've seen several examples over the last 4 years. It really is quite disgusting, but I can tell you that I was very proud of that race. We had some very contentious debates. There was a night in this boardroom when Mr. DeRue took me to task in a different way than I was taken to task on the same issue. It involved that pay raise pledge. That pledge was 8 years ago. I fully accounted for that and wrote a letter to the Macomb Daily in an editorial, and I outlined all the reasons why that pledge was something that I should never have made. It was not in the township's best interest, and the headline, "Not in the township's best interest," ran with the editorial that I wrote. I've never been afraid of saying I got it wrong. I've never been afraid of saying this was a mistake and I'm sorry and this is why I did what I did at the time, but this is why I see it now. The person who brings the claim forward now has no clue. She hasn't been in the township. She referenced, Mr. Supervisor, this individual that you support so enthusiastically. She referenced, as she waved the piece that she helped to create, my dad got this piece in the mail. The reason her dad got it is because she doesn't pay taxes in this community. She could have given the piece to her dad after she and Clerk Berry got it back from the printer, but she comes to the Township Board meeting and waves it around like, look what I got. It's despicable, and as Trustee Anderson said, it had nothing to do with the issues that we face here in the township. It was simply an attack. And you can tell it was an attack because of the people that paid for it. The fictitious people that paid for it there's no political action committee, there's no registered committee. The post office box, in order to use a mailing house, you have to have a return address. The post office box that was used didn't even have a name. I'm going to tell you, I'll find out that barcode that everybody got is the identifier for that mailing house. I'm going to track it down. I know who it is, but I'm going to bring the proof back, and I'm going to substantiate the claims that Mr. Speaker and some other commenters made about this being a very rigged deal. This being an attempt to stack a board with a 5-2. 4-3 is not sufficient. There's too much debate in a 4-3 board. 5-2 is what we have to have. And when you look at the very ugly coordinated effort that has happened in this election cycle, you cannot come away, Republican or Democrat, with anything other than a very despicable, nasty campaign. And if I were a hardcore Democrat, I would say let them eat their own. Let them eat their own. Because the way that this has gone about for the purpose of securing a 5-2 stranglehold, when that happens, our police department is a goner, your water rates are sky high, and there's no checks and balances. I have plenty of data and plenty of things I'm going to share with you next week, 2 weeks, because that is the appropriate time for the public safety SAD. So I'll save that for then. I know that I'm running long already tonight. Mr. Kadich, the comments, I appreciate you moving from the fish habitat away from the beach. I don't believe that that's an option at this point. I really don't. And as I said at previous board meetings, I think that our obligation is just to move as quickly as we can to the best possible project and make sure that it is as best as it can possibly be. That is the obligation, I think, at this point. Your concerns about that piece and your concerns about who supported that piece, you couldn't hear it probably from the audio if you wanted to watch it, but Trustee Demink in his board comments made it very clear that he was not participatory in any way. He didn't know the individual and did not give his permission for his likeness or his comments. Likewise, the social media post about the Police Officer Labor Council being a liberal union that supports Obama-related causes and all kinds of other nonsense was vetted by the police chief. The same individual bombarded the police chief and made ridiculous claims about the endorsement of the law enforcement officers. Again, I don't want to speak for them. They speak through their union. The police union has endorsed who they endorsed, that being myself, Treasurer LaFata, and Trustee Anderson. We stand with the officers, they stand with us. The same individual, I'm not going to spend much time on, Trustee Anderson, I think you did a nice job. She referred to herself as a halfway decent human being. I guess I just see the other half constantly. I don't know that I've seen anything but the half that is undecent. When I bumped into you at an event for the Meet the Candidates, I was gracious. You communicated to me there were things on my Facebook you found offensive. I said that I did not intend to cause harm, and I removed them. I sent you a note the next day, and I said, it was nice to meet you. I wish we had met prior. Maybe we could have spared ourselves some hardship. That was immediately met with nonsense about the police officer labor being liberal and so forth. I can't figure you out. I'm not going to try. It really doesn't matter to me. It has nothing to do with your status as a woman or a combat veteran. Those are all admirable things. As a father and a husband, I resent the implication that because I disagree with your very illogical and unhinged ramblings that I don't believe in supporting women or veterans. It's a ridiculous hypothesis. The comments made by John Spica, I think we've already covered. There is very little doubt that tremendous effort has gone into a coordinated campaign, and there's nothing wrong with supporting people that support you and support the things that you feel are strong. The problem is when you use when you unleash crazy on your opponents, and then you stand in a public square steeped in ethics and the Second Amendment and the Constitution, and you put out pieces citing the Pledge of Allegiance wrapped in the American flag. Then a guy comes into the township, passes out propaganda, you high-five him. This is the same individual that assaulted, really just bombarded us with nonstop text messages, emails, phone calls. Treasurer LaFata and Trustee Anderson were getting at their house at all hours of the night. This individual eventually sent me an email telling me that if I didn't meet him privately in a park, he was going to ruin me with scandal. It was the most bizarre and despicable thing I had ever really encountered, and it spooked me a little bit. It really did. I mean, I know that there are unhinged people out there, but this person having so much knowledge and so much, I was really very, very disturbed. And then I started looking into this individual. And when I posted some things on Facebook, I realized his neighbors on his street have been tormented for months. This guy is nonstop with the Trump 2020, and he's got flags and rallies at his house, and the neighbors call the police, and then he tells the police officers, oh, I'm good buddies with Supervisor Acciavatti, I'm a good guy, and then he tells his neighbors this, and so the flags come down for a day, then they go back up the next day. And Trustee Joseph, can you help us with this guy? And I say, just call the police. I can't really do anything about that call, but they're not, it's a ringer. This guy works for, I don't know what he does. I just know that when he sent an email referencing my wife and daughters, not only did I head over to Huron Point Sportsman's Club and make sure that my accuracy was good, I made sure that my training was up to date, and I haven't taken the firearm off of my hip since that day. And when a guy tells you that he's going to run you out of town, he's going to ruin you, and he references your wife and daughters, you need to take that very seriously. So when that same kook shows up at a board meeting and he takes high fives, he contributes to the campaigns that you've heard of tonight, and they support him and he supports them, you start to realize this is one of the most foul things really in the history of our township, including a guy getting taken out by the FBI. I'm very troubled. I'm sorry. I'm very troubled. Yes.
I think we've
probably heard enough. I would like to say.
No. You cannot violate the Open Meetings Act. I'd like to finish. I realize this is painful. Imagine how painful it was to have these 5 minutes or 8 minutes used last meeting, only to have the sound distorted. Imagine how upsetting that was. Oh, okay, sorry. The concerns about the clerk and the attendance is not just attendance related. I have deep concerns about the clerk. I will share this with you, Mr. Acciavatti, and the Township Board tomorrow morning. I was in the Township office last week. There's an individual who was working and handling ballots by himself at a table. I'm very, very concerned about the integrity of our election. And as I investigated and I heard from township employees, what I find is that we have a township employee here in the township who was hired by the clerk, who is a resident of the state of Kansas. He doesn't have a residence here in the township. And so when you ask where does he stay, the answer is at the clerk's office. At the clerk's home. Our clerk's home is being used for an employee of the township who works on the election, and then is rumored to be out campaigning for the clerk in the evening. It is something that I took to the HR director here when I first found out about it from the employees that work in the clerk's office, and then I contacted Mr. Siebert. Mr. Siebert is aware. The directive, I believe, that comes from HR is that this is highly unethical. It is highly unethical. The campaign finance documents that you talk about are just littered with problems with the clerk, including hotel rooms, which I don't know how multiple hotel rooms from your campaign account. It is the most salacious and creepy and disgusting and certainly unethical. Yet they tried to cleanse her in an ethics policy a few weeks back. The long and short of this is, throughout the threats, the harassment, the nonstop calls and texts, the ridiculous pieces that include quotes from internal township emails and pictures that were taken in Treasurer LaFata's secured office that were included from citizens, despicable. Our opponents are working together. They're donating to one another's campaigns through various PACs, as was talked about by another speaker. They're employing each other's family members. As I say, the clerk is scheduling and paying for hotel rooms. She has a boarder living in her home who's working in the township office. These are weird, deceitful, disgusting antics. And I tell you that I believe we are just one tiger short of a Netflix series with this kind of behavior. Next week, we can bring some order back. I hope that we do. And I pray that we can have an election cycle leading into November where we can talk about the issues the way good Republicans and good Democrats do. It's issues-based. It's not gotcha-based. It's not just this nonsense that we have. And until we have assurances that the video quality is transparent and presented, I believe the members who I mentioned earlier have committed to paying for the professional videographer. That video will be uploaded tonight, and the information about how to distribute the link to as many residents as you can will be included in the email that I sent to you. I don't know how it goes next week, and I can say that I am very, very honored to have served as your township trustee for the last 8 years, and if it is your desire to bring somebody else to the seat, I respect that. And I know that my friends, Trustee Anderson and LaFata, who come to this they don't need the job. They're here to do a job. They feel the same way. It's been an honor and a privilege to represent you. And if I'm fortunate enough to continue into the general, I'll do my best to bring an ethical campaign forward that reflects the issues that we all care about. Thank you.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I've always held that the board table is meant to do the people's business, not our own. We've heard quite a bit tonight about everybody's personal issues, all sorts of things that are just bizarre. But what I didn't hear, and I don't know if anyone else did, and perhaps one of the recordings will pick it up, I didn't hear in any board comments about any vision for the township. I didn't hear about anything anyone wanted to do for the residents. I didn't hear about perhaps putting together some of the events that I've put together over the last several years. Veteran Services Day, which many people on this board that spoke tonight so impassionate did not support. I just don't understand why you wouldn't support our veterans and their families. We gave support and assistance to over 300 veterans and their families that day. I had people come up to me and thank me for doing that. And it wasn't just me, it was a team. It was a team of people here who did that. I would have loved to have had the involvement of some of my fellow board members. That didn't happen. Is it because they don't support veterans? I don't believe that. I believe they do. They don't support me. So others suffered for it. I don't agree with that, but it didn't matter. Trustee Vosberg was there. Supervisor Acciavatti was there. I believe even Trustee DeMink stopped by. But our own veterans on this board did not bother to walk across the hall to support their brothers in arms. My husband's a disabled veteran. We served our country. And I say we because when veterans serve, their families and spouses do as well. We all serve. And it's a privilege and an honor to serve. So I was very proud to do that day. And I'm hoping we'll be able to do that again this year. Unfortunately, COVID has gotten in the way of that temporarily. But I'll hope that all of us here, and I was very happy that all of our board did support the resolution to have that event again this year. And so I hope we're able to do that possibly later in October or at some point when the post-COVID world makes that possible. Or perhaps we serve our residents by putting together events like Healthy Chesterfield Day, which I did as well. Supervisor Acciavatti, I believe, was one of the first ones to do that years ago when he was a state representative. So I picked up the ball and ran with that one too, because I thought that our residents and our seniors deserve to have those services which they had difficulty getting to, perhaps, brought to them. And we did that. We had an immunization clinic here, and we had over 30 health and wellness representatives and professionals covering all different areas of health and wellness here for our seniors. And almost 200 of our seniors were served that day. And that took some time and effort to do. But again, I believe Parks and Recreation assisted us with that. The clerk's department worked tirelessly on that event as well. So perhaps something like that we could talk about. Perhaps we can talk about the vision of all of our residents being able, and all of the entire public being able to access all of the records that are held in the township 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without having to come into the township offices at a time that's inconvenient for them. To do it on their time, having access to those things. Perhaps we can talk about the vision of doing that, which is something else that I did as well. It's not important by that who did it. What's important is that it got done. And we're still in the process of doing that. And I'd like to continue doing that. That's part of my vision of having an online library that people can access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we've got quite a few records in that library currently. Perhaps we can talk about the vision of having more parks and recreational activities available for people who live here. Things for them to do with their children when they're not working. Perhaps we can talk about that. Perhaps we can talk about the vision of having a trails system here where we can go with our families and bike and hike and go throughout the township on non-motorized pathways. Maybe we talk about having more nature preserves. I know someone talked about that a little bit today. Talked about preserving the environmental aspects here in Chesterfield. Absolutely on the right track. And we've been doing that. And we've been securing that property. And this board has taken action to do that. Not all of us supported it, but I did. Why? Again, what's important is that it gets done. And I think that there are some shared visions there. So let's talk about vision. Let's talk about what additional value and what additional services that we can bring to our residents and our businesses who invest here. Let's talk about that. But instead we spend many hours at this point talking about everything else, when in fact that is really the thing that we should be talking about here. And quite frankly, the only thing. We should be talking about good policy. We should be talking about best practices. We should be talking about vision. We should be talking about service delivery. Those are the things we should be talking about. But instead, we want to talk about everything else that doesn't matter to 99.9% of our residents. So I was interested in everything I heard today. I'm sure some of you were very interested, shocked by some of it as well. I was too. And I would suggest that instead of using the board table to advance political or personal agendas, or to advance political positions or attacks and anything like that, And it's difficult during an election year. I understand some people just can't help themselves in this case. But instead of doing that, perhaps we talk about the vision of why we're here. Let's talk about the purpose for which we're here and the vision that we are setting forth. Or let's even talk about what's been accomplished so that people have an idea of what's been going on while we're here. So those are just some of the things that I think we should focus on as a board. Let's stop talking about ourselves and each other. If anyone has any questions about how we perform our duties, where we do it, how we do it, what we've accomplished, what we have done to advance the interests of the people who live here and the businesses who invest here, if they're interested in finding out those things about us, I trust that those individuals will contact us. There was an individual who spoke here tonight who asked me if he could sit down with me and have a conversation about that. Absolutely. In fact, I love to do that. Many of you may remember early on in my first term and part of my second term, I used to have coffee with the clerk office hours for individuals who couldn't get here during regular business hours, because I don't believe that we are elected officials and representatives from 8 to 4:30. We're elected representatives, and we are accountable to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's just my opinion, and that's my perspective. So I would make myself available whenever anyone else needed me to be available within reason. And so an individual asked to spend some time, and we did. We spent an hour together in this room. And he asked a lot of good questions, and I was very happy to answer them because I was able to actually educate him on what the clerk does, what we're responsible for statutorily, and how we've gone about satisfying that. And I love to talk about that. I've been a certified clerk for 6 years. Certified by the International Association of Municipal Clerks, certified by the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks. I'm the past president of the Macomb County Clerks Association. So talking about being a clerk is something I love to do, and I'd be happy to do that with anyone who has an interest in doing that. Talking about the clerk's office, talking about what clerks do, asking about what we've done to advance those things. And I believe that you should ask those questions of everyone on your board. Your supervisor, your treasurer, have those conversations with those individuals. Sit down with your trustees and ask, what does a trustee do? And how have you contributed to that? So I think that's where where the focus needs to be. And I would recommend that moving forward, if we truly want to serve the interests of the residents and the citizens here, my family has been here since 1828. Got our land grant in 1828. And everyone likes to talk about how long they've been here. We've been here a pretty long time. I was very pleased and privileged to move my family back here in 2000 when my second child was on the way. I call her my $1 million baby because I think it cost me about $1 million to buy a new house, buy new vehicles, and make all the accommodations for her. And she's worth every penny. Okay. But my family's been here and been part of Chesterfield since 1828. So when I serve here, I take it very personally because it's part of our legacy. And I go out of my way to try to do as much as I possibly can. And it's been a privilege and honor to serve as long as I have. And I hope that everyone else takes that same perspective. And I hope moving forward, we'll hear more about vision. We'll hear more about plans. And we'll also hear more about collaboration and moving forward together, because that's what it's going to take. Thanks.
Treasurer LaFata.
First thing I'd like to do is I want to apologize to my Deputy Treasurer, Alan Clark, and my staff. I felt they've been compromised over a letter that Supervisor put in the Voice last week, and some of the information that was on a flyer that was put out by a person of unknown origins. I don't feel that they should be compromised. They should feel poorly about what happens in the media. They work very hard. They've been in the office every day all through COVID because they can't do their jobs from home. It's a good group of people. There's people out there that talk about efficiency and how they're going to, improve efficiency. Well, efficiency, unlike ethics, is immeasurable. It's based on utilizations, based on output. Very easy to measure efficiency, not to talk about it, but to measure it. Efficiency takes in consideration utilization. It takes in consideration the number of people you utilize. It takes in consideration the amount of floor space you need. Like if you need like 60% of the office space to, to run the clerk's department or the, elections department, you take up 60% of the floor space, and that's utilization. And if you look at the amount of time for the utilization, it's short-lived. It's only a few times a year. But that's efficiency. It's immeasurable. You can look it up. It's very easy to define and it's easy to measure. Very easy to tell somebody you're going to improve it, but if you don't have any values for it, then you're just, you don't really know what you're doing. Last week, for some reason, all of a sudden I got cut off because contrary to board rules, while I was in the middle of my board comments, somebody got recognized out of order and moved to adjourn. I don't know how that happens, but I don't know how we have board rules and something like that happens. I really don't think it's ethical. We have an ethics policy. Everybody says it's, but I don't really know how that's happened. And I really didn't get a chance to finish because last week we had a agenda item to repair the Township Bridge. And I went through it. There was no financial review for that program. I went through and I looked at the cost for a wooden bridge. I looked at the cost for a cement bridge. I did some calculations. I met with our finance director just to make sure that everything was proper and accurate. I presented it to the board, and it was contradicted and discounted because our supervisor said that we had a 4-hour meeting on it, based on our executive meetings. So I went and pulled the meeting minutes from that, and we had from 1:30 to 2 p.m. on February the 12th we met. On March the 4th, we just went through and reviewed again what we went through on February the 12th. And on May the 13th, from 2 to 2:15, we had a discussion on it. So it's about 45 minutes of somebody's 4-hour meeting that he got one of his direct reports to confirm that we had a 4-hour meeting. So this is consistent with what I get because I try and scrutinize the financials and the values of every project that goes through this township. I feel it's part of my responsibility. It's not opinion. It's based on numbers. It's based on facts. I don't do that. Another thing I don't do is I don't lie. Never lie. Once you get caught in a lie, you have no respect. There's an old saying, when the debate is lost, lies and slander become the tools of the loser. That's what's happening here in the township. Kind of sad. Unfortunately, I'm not a politician. I'm not going to rant and rave for another 15 minutes, but there's a lot of lies floating around. All I'm trying to do is I scrutinize. I've been, managing business for a long time. It's dollars and cents. You don't get any better unless you measure yourself. You don't get any better unless you manage it. And there's responsibility and accountability for everything. And when there's no responsibility and there's no accountability, then there's a lot of waste that falls through the cracks. Thank you.
I was not going to make any statements tonight. I wrote that down on every page here. Last meeting before the primary. However, Trustee Anderson's comments made me change my mind. I do a lot around this township. However, one of the things I don't do
or have anything to do with is the recording of these meetings and the AV and the QBS team that picked the equipment to ensure it gets recorded. And my only involvement, frankly, was to demand that it got done and to demand that they ended up on YouTube for the first time in 20 years and to bring to the board the concept. However, we have a QBS team for every service vendor. And that QBS team is a qualification-based selection process to select the vendor and constantly improve on the service. It highlights the problem very, very well. The anger and the, somehow the supervisor's got a magic button up here. I have no clue how it works. I don't know how that team, who was Treasurer LaFata, Clerk Barry, and Trustee Anderson. They chose the equipment. It's their job to make sure it runs smoothly. Now, I'm on a lot of QBS teams. Trash, engineering, planning, along with Trustee Joseph and other members of this board. But the fact that we've got blame on something that you're a member of the team, not only that, you're a member of the leadership, is very, very telling. My expectations for the next board, if I am fortunate enough to be sitting in this chair, will be the same expectations I had 4 years ago when I was attempting to sit in this chair. And that is to have a elected board of this community that serves the community without trading votes, without quid pro quos, and makes their decisions based on the issue in front of you, not a trade for another issue. Please, no clapping. Where we went south was on March 27th, 2017. That's when this whole package went bad. And if you go back and look at that meeting, you'll know why. Comments on 4-3 votes, or comments on how votes have turned out up here. I've never asked for, I've never coordinated, I've never conspired to put together any number of votes for any issue, period. The only thing that is an absolute certainty is there has been 3 votes on this board, and sometimes 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 6, against some of the things I want to do. However, there's a steady 3 against construction projects, path projects, road projects, parks, grants, and veterans balls. So I didn't mean to make those comments. I didn't intend on making those comments. Let this stray into those areas. I hope that answers your question. I'll have the exact same expectations with the next board if I'm fortunate enough to be here. This is not the guy who plays those games. Those people have no business leading this township. Item number 11 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Support.
Motion by Trustee Vosburgh, support by Trustee Joseph to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying nay. We are